And now, from Grid Square Echo Mike 48, this is 100 Watts and a Wire.
Well, hello and welcome again to 100 Watts and Wire. I'm Christian. My call sign is K0STH. Steve is here with me, W7UDI from the great state of Washington. You are in a beautiful land.
Yes, I love this place.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. It's gorgeous. And I need to get up there. My wife and I will talk about places we want to go, because now that's the thing you can do, is you can talk about where you want to go. I'm looking at places like Switzerland. I've fallen into this strange Instagram rabbit hole where something was recommended to me, and I was like, what is that place? And it turns out that it's
awesome.
It's Switzerland. And I'm like, wow. And it's cold, of course, but I'm like, look at that. There's a waterfall in the mountains and the snow is on the ground. And I'm like feeling this tug that for a place I've never been. But also I talk about the Pacific Northwest, where kind of the ocean meets the countryside. And I'm like, I gotta get there. So it's on my list, man. It's on my list. No oceans here in the middle, in the heartland. So anyway, I've invited myself over to Steve's. We'll take a drive at some point to the ocean and set up our rigs or whatever. We're doing and that show, that part of the show just blew by so fast. We're talking about our ham radio. Elmers is our terminology in the hobby. Our mentors, our teachers, people who give back and sort of push this great hobby and service forward. And this is a community where, we just need a little patience. You just need patience. Cue Axl Rose. We just need a little patience. The Guns N' Roses reference. Some of you will get that. Some of you are like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, boy. But it should be an internationally recognized day where you at least pause and think about your Elmers and the people who help kind of piece you together as your foundation. And even if you just go back to the last moment you got stuck, I have a handful of them. Steve takes the brunt of my crap and has to deal with me. It is what that is. But there's so many other people that I talk to about audio. Friends of mine that I admire what they do, video and lighting, just for things like this, or, connecting and building, whatever it is in your life. It's probably a good thing right after Thanksgiving, because those are the people you think about and you may take for granted. We definitely are taking for granted our Elmers and the people who are keeping us up there. I remember a guy
and like you said, it goes beyond, just here in amateur radio. It's in our professional lives too. It's the people that, mentor us along, and in other hobbies, that we're not just stuck in this one hobby. We have other interests. So, thank your mentors, the people that bring you along and that helped you along, whether it's, in your personal side or in your professional side.
I remember a guy, his name's Lanny. He tried this show, N0JZ. Look him up on QRZ. Lanny. He will not be listening to this. He thinks this is boring. At least he did years ago. I was like, Lanny, come check out the show. It was kind of like after I'd started. And it was a conversation thing, and you're either into it or you're not into it. And he's an old Marine, and he was just like, I gotta say, it's just boring.
I bet he uses a paper log too. So,
oh man, no, Lanny, why, Lanny, no. But and I totally got him. Like, that's cool, man. That's totally cool. He has a beautiful station. But I remember he said, hey, your antenna situation, like what bands are you trying to work on? And it was like, I like 40. I'd love to be able to do 80. And then when you're new, you're like, you want everything. You want the magic. You want the magic, but you can't do it all. You don't have enough coax, whatever it is. And he gave me my first, it was the first antenna that I hung up. It was a Trap 40 and 80 meter. Could not tell you how this thing worked, but he's like, how's it doing on 40? I'm like, it's really great. I got like the whole band. This is ridiculous. I don't have all of 80. And he's like, well, you're not going to get all of 80. It's really, and I didn't understand. But if I go out and I spent the day trimming the end, back in, read it the other end. And, I'm fighting over that 100 KC or whatever, that little spot that's just moving because I wanted it all, but I just would kept moving the main piece, and I didn't get it. I'm like, Lanny, he's like, call me on the phone. And it was like, look at here, son, look. He doesn't talk like that, but he's like, you have to understand, you're not going to get all of 80, but you don't need the CW unless you plan on learning the code anyway. So why don't you tune it from this point to this point, and it'll give you more of the band. One day you'll have a better antenna, and it'll give you more broad, and but I needed somebody to tell me, you're not going to get it, kid. You're going to be outside moving this slice of the pie back and forth, up and down 80 meters.
It'll drive you nuts.
It'll drive you nuts. And in his way, which was sort of a very direct, dry, your show is boring and sucks, and you're not going to get 80 meters, all of it. So stop doing that. Sometimes we just need those people in our lives to say, hey. And he didn't give me the answer so much, but it was like, what do you want to do? Like, what's the frequency you're looking for? Why don't we shoot for this? Trim it back a little bit. He was the guy who taught me what happens when I let out more of the wire on the end. How does that shift my SWR readings? How about when I make it shorter? Those things. And I still have these emails that I go back and forth to. Old Lanny, again, he doesn't claim me, N0JZ, but in the beginning, he was one of the guys that
he helped you along. He was a big influence into you. I remember.
He got me on the air. Came over here, this rack behind me. He was like, look at this guy with his rack. Like I'm supposed to have a folding table that fell over, and I had this wacky thing, and he helped me run the cables. A couple of guys, but today is that day where we're gonna loosely share the appreciation for our ham radio teachers. There's so many great comments that are happening. There's I don't know how many have even come in, but 100 more or whatever. And I can't catch up with them. So I encourage everybody to go back to this show to look at the call signs that have been put into the chat, because they're just blowing around and I can't get them all. So anyway, let me look in here just to see. There's a comment about Gordo, and we're talking about Gordon West, who has written books about how to become a ham radio operator.
Gordo has been a huge influence in the teaching world, and getting the license manuals out. And it's just not amateur radio. It's also he's in the GROL, the General Radio Operator License, the GROL, as and all those endorsements. And big influence, and putting all that together and going out and teaching. A huge influence, a big mover and shaker in the hobby here.
Also, here's a rock star in the game, Steve, a Whiskey Golf 0 Alpha Tango. He's known to be one of the best to go out and operate on a summit. And I want to have you come on the show with us, Steve. If you're still watching, I'd love to have you come on and share some time with us. I've worked him. He's done segments on our show where he's taken us up the mountain with him in an audio way. He also has a YouTube channel, which I've watched with his goats. His goats were carrying his gear up there, talking about his Elmer there. So it's nice. Ed, of course, is out in Germany. He's let's see.
Oh, the SCPT question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess we need to get into some of our questions. But anyway, thank you guys for coming by. I know this is swimming by quickly in the comments. Let's get on to this question here, Steve. This is from Leanne. She was on our show a couple of weeks ago. And she's a military family. So her husband may be reassigned, maybe getting a new job. And it's a little up in the air right now. And I know that's a stressful thing, especially around the holidays. So we're thinking about you, Leanne. But I saw you post this on Facebook. Anyone with current firsthand knowledge of reciprocal agreements with Germany or Spain, specifically for American technician licenses, it continues, or knowledge of whether or not a non-citizen could get licensed in those countries through their own exams, fees, etc., if you aren't a citizen but are living in the country on military orders. So there you go. This is a tricky one for me because I've thought about being in other places. What does it mean? Is it a temporary license? And it's way out of my league. And I did ask for help on this one. So if you have that, and I know I'm going to keep an eye on the chat here because I think we could probably.
I know that there's a fair amount of knowledge base, let's throw it that way, on the ARRL website. There's a lot of information there. Personally, I don't know all the details. And then in regard to the technician class, I know there's with the general and the extra, then there, some countries have class 1, 2, or they have different classifications. No go for technician reciprocal.
Okay, so Ed is in Germany. He's DD5LP. For those who are listening at home, he says, sorry, no go for technician with reciprocal in the country. However, a military base might be different. So we'll follow that along. But we should look into the league and to see they may have some sort of information or at least some contact points there in different countries.
So I'm kind of thinking I'm going to spitball on this, that, with the technician class, that might be a foundation level with some of these other countries. I know if you have a general or extra, it's definitely a lot easier with the reciprocals. But, hey, Leanne, here's a good opportunity to upgrade your license and get into general and extra.
Yeah, and I think it's her son.
There, Ian.
I think it's her son. Ian says U.S. military bases are U.S. sovereign territory. U.S. federal laws apply. So
that's great. You can operate from the base. But, Leanne likes to go out and do some soda. That would be, and then have having a reciprocal European privileges. Now you become the DX.
Ed continues here and says CEPT covers general, German novice, extra/advanced, full license. Relevant documents are no reciprocals to foundation under CEPT.
That's why we have you, Ed.
That's why we have Ed. Ed is actually in Germany. Very helpful guy. My wife was studying abroad there for two summers ago and offered to help if needed, if anything were to go wrong there. So I appreciate his insight and expertise in the country where he lives and does his thing. So I think that there's some more exploring there, but I think that helps get maybe a little closer, Leanne. I hope that will help you if you're watching this now or as it's posted later on YouTube. So there you go. And Ed is a DD5LP. He probably wouldn't mind if you dropped him a line there. So I guess we can continue on here. We got to take a break in a little bit. Our celebration of Elmer's. Feel free to drop your Elmer's call signs. We're going to be giving away an antenna here after the break. So how about we do it this way, Steve, to cut down on some of the confusion on some of the call signs of mentors the person associated with the call sign picked. Wait a minute, maybe that's not going to work either. Damn it, I should have thought this through. But anyway, we'll figure it out. We'll put all the call signs into the chat. And if you put your call sign and name at any time during the show, you'll be eligible to win this week's antenna, which I think we go back to the old-fashioned dipole. This week, we're going to give away an off-center fed this week. And in just a few minutes, by the way, we'll do that. So go ahead and put your call signs in there.
And you'll be eligible for next week's giveaway.
Next week's, yep.
Yes.
If you were here last week, it's just sort of you have to be here kind of deal.
Yeah.
And thank you all for those who are watching it live. We appreciate you as we fumble our way through it. All right. So call signs are populating. We're going to take a little break here. We've got more questions. One of my favorite parts of the show. We can take your questions as well, but we've got some leftover questions from our social media presence, Facebook page, Twitter, and some that are in the comments through YouTube now. So we have a really cool collection. And we're going to get to that stuff here in just a little bit. Let's take a break. We'll pause, pump the brakes, and we'll come back and hit your questions next on 100 Watts in a Wire. Main Trading Company is your one-stop ham radio shop in Paris, Texas. Find us on the web at mtcradio.com. We've been in business for 12 years. We take trades and love to help fellow hams trade up to a newer rig. Watch our used gear page on the web for great deals on older and even like new equipment. Main Trading is a mom and pop business owned by Richard and Christine Lenore. We hope you'll hop on the web and give us a try, or give us a call at 903-737-0773. We're here hoping to earn your business with good old-fashioned friendly service. If you're in Northeast Texas, stop in and see us at 2707 Lamar Avenue. Main Trading Company, Surplus Electronics, and Ham Radio. Really love to help the smaller, the mom and pa companies now, and it's Christmas time, and
we're getting fewer and fewer of them. You know.
Yeah, I mean, they
Universal is closing their doors, not because they've lost business; they're retiring. So
yeah, comes a time.
Comes time to move on.
And we got some questions here. One of my favorite parts of the show here is when we're a little bit challenged. Should we get into, maybe we should do the antenna giveaway, because I think that's probably
let's get that.
Let's do that. It is time for us to give away an antenna. We're going to give away an off-center fed dipole this week. If you were in the chat last week and put your call signs in there, you were qualified to win in a random drawing. Random drawing is very simple. Your call signs are pulled out. They're assigned a number. My daughters do the picking, match it up to your call sign, and that's how we give it away. My thanks to LDG, who are sponsoring 12 weeks of antenna giveaway. So we're just trying to go through the deal, give them all away. There's some interesting things too. Like the flagpole antenna was really cool. I think that's the one Rosa won. We got the old-fashioned dipole, just an old-fashioned dipole playing on the radio. So let's, you got to be a certain age to understand that one too. Let's give this away. We're going to give away an off-center fed dipole, and the winner is Nicholas.
Nicholas, woohoo!
Nicholas is Kilo Delta 2 United Victor Delta. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, congratulations, Nicholas. Excellent.
That's cool. That's very good. And I'm curious to see how all these things will work. It would be really neat.
Let us know when you get them on the, get them strung up, and remember, if you do it in the snow, they will work better.
And the propagation is better.
Oh yeah, everything's better when it's snowing.
Everything's better in the snow, he says.
That's funny.
Boy, you'd have to be there in the meet and greets to understand what cupping the balls is all about. That's a new feature. Well, I think that's a new feature. If you got a camera, let's see you cup your balls. This show probably won't last very long on YouTube. They'll just say, "What were you thinking? Cupping balls." I mean, it's not as dirty as you make it out to be, you weirdos. But thank you for coming on, Nicholas. Kilo Delta 2 United Victor Delta. All right. I think it's time for us to get into some questions. Steve, you can submit your questions through the chat. We'll pick them up there. On Facebook, a lot of questions go around on Facebook, comments on the YouTube channel, all that sort of stuff is where we're pulling from.
And there was the leftovers.
Yeah, tell me about what's going on. Oh, yes, we're going to do that first. Here it is. This is the question. It says, Steve, I'm really intrigued of what the really good story is of the flag on the wall that you mentioned during the 100 Watts and Wire pre-show meet and greet. Now, let me go ahead and throw this up here. There's a picture that you sent to me that looks like this on your screen.
And I took it off the wall because, now you want it behind me, where it used to be behind me when I had on the shot over here. So
it's cool. Tell us about it.
This is a metal flag. It was done at the local high school. My wife works at the high school in the office, and the metal shop they cut this out on I think it's a water jet, and then the students paint it, and so this is all hand painted by students, and then they let me get it into the view a little bit, and then so the students hand paint this, and then they sell it off. And my wife was one day she came home with it, and it helps support the students or the school and the metal shop program. And I was just floored when it came home. It's just, and I hung it in my shack. And
I didn't know from the photograph that the stars were actually real holes. You could see through that.
Everything is, it's just all cut out and then painted. And it's been in my shack for a couple of years, about a year, 2 years, I think it was. It was a couple of years. And it's been great. I love it. It's very, yes, Edwin, it is like a piece of art, but and to me, there's a lot of sentimental values, and it's the kids were, they were learning something from it, and the painting of it. And then I got another one on the wall right behind the camera that my son did, and it's just basically the radio with the microphone. You've seen the picture, and then has my call sign, and that's been painted blue. And my son actually did that one, so I have that one on the wall. But yeah, that's kind of the interesting story, is that it's local. And the kids were involved in it, and my wife, got it for me, and she thought it would have been a great addition to the ham shack, and so now I got an empty spot on the wall over there.
Man,
something else, and I got to move it back.
Yeah, I think back there is going to be beautiful behind that Collins rig. Good Lord, man, that's beautiful. So, did you say they sell those? Or it's like a donation thing? Because I would totally be into that, and I bet you. I wonder if we could work something out.
I know there was.
I bet you we could sell them if they did sell them, but maybe that gets tricky with it being a school.
Yeah,
maybe it could be a fundraiser. I would pay for that.
They use it kind of as a fundraiser, but look at your local high school. Don't, it'd be great for, ours here, but, look into the metal shop if they might do something like that. And, or any projects, even the woodworking shop. My wife's into some arts and crafts hobby, and the woodworking shop made some special tables for her, and it's worked out great. So, look into it. Support. That's a great way to support the your local high schools, and if they have industrial arts classes, and that's something that usually gets pulled out, and then we need to keep that going in our local schools to, not everybody's bound for college, but we need people to have skills and things like that. So great
tie into our Elmering conversation with mentors. We've talked about this a few weeks ago with Leanne, and they took these sorts of programs out of my high school. It became not an option. You had to go to a different high school to learn how to work in the shop. My father was a sheet metal man. He was a heating and air conditioning man. So he had a break, and he had things I could be around, and mostly cut myself. I bled too easy. My father, I think I made him nervous, but I was always cut myself on sheet metal. But, these sorts of trades have kind of moved out of, and that may be a good entry point into science and radio and these sorts of things. So I wish maybe there's a conversation that we can have in our local school systems about introducing these programs, these trade possibles, even learning radio. And some schools are doing it, but it's not like it's it's not up there with math. It's not up there on the thing.
Computer
it's more
sciences. They've all pushing into that direction, and but we're forgetting the basic trades. And I was fortunate enough at my high school, we had electronics, and I went all 4 years. I had an electronics class. It was part of the industrial arts.
I would buy one of those. I would pay for it and have it shipped, and have that money go back to whatever school, you know what I mean? And I think many people would love that. It's beautiful. What a great gift that your wife found and gave. But excellent. That's the backstory. Supporting local talent. Great piece. Steve.
Look into your local high schools, see if they can do whatever. They have all kinds of things, and support it. They can. It gives the students something to work towards, and then they can they take the money from this and buy more materials, and it just keeps on building and building and building. And it's a great way to support your local high schools.
We've got a question here from a friend I'd like to share here, Steve. Let's see if we can help. Ronnie, Whiskey Victor 8 Tango. I've been 100 watts in a wire for 20 years, and I've loved every second of it. For the most part, I've been using the G5 RVs. I'm looking for something better. Here's more. I've never had a wire to get on 160. What's the best wire out there? I don't know if that's in terms of wire that you can buy and use. Again, G5s have been great, but with my IC 7100 and LDG tuner, I struggle with pulsating signal on 18 through 28 on the digital mode. So this is kind of like a broad, it sounds like he wants an idea for what an antenna, something different from a G5 RV that maybe can get him on 160 and work the digital modes. And when he asked what's the best wire out there, I don't know if that's sort of stranded, solid copper, insulated.
Or is that the best wire antenna out there?
Exactly.
So,
well, let's cover both, Steve. In terms of the
actual, let's start with the 160. And so there, we don't have any multi-band wire antennas for 160, but 160 requires a lot of space. But I did some research, as you can see. I got a couple of manuals out here. I have one that's the ARRL antenna handbook, and then I got the low band DXing antenna book, and I went to go look up 160 antennas. We had a question from last week about what would be a good antenna for 160. Well, there's two come into mind. Is the dipole, just the basic dipole, but you're looking at 256 feet end to end. Is like, God, that's a lot of wire out there. But the one that comes up a lot and is a little more palatable and for most people's application is the inverted L, and basically it's a quarter wave antenna. It starts at the ground, and you have it as a vertical component and then a horizontal component. The only tricky part about that to work very efficiently is you got to lay out some ground radials and stuff. But it's basically a quarter wave wire antenna with a ground plane. So think of it as a ground plane antenna, but it has a bend in it, and so that's probably the easiest and to get out there. The G5 RV antenna is a multi-band antenna, and from what I understand, the original design was designed more so for 20 meters, but it's been worked over the years, and it turns into a multi-band antenna with a tuner. And so in your case, can you put up multiple antennas? Because I think the G5 kind of falls into the 20, 15, 10 meters in the traditional bands, and then we have the work bands, which is 17 meters and 12, and where they kind of fall out of that. If personally, I think if you can put up some other antennas, the dipole is right off the bat is the standard, and go from there, especially for like 17 meters or 12. Throw up a dipole for those bands specifically. If you can put up multiple antennas, not everybody has that option. And another one is think of a loop. Is if you have the room to put up a loop, that's another one that works really well on multiple bands and even on probably 17 and 12. So the key with the loop is whatever band you're going to use for the lowest frequency. So if you want to do 160, you got to put up over 500 feet of wire, and that takes up a lot of space. And but a loop is probably a good all around, but it's a space hog. But if you can't put up 500 feet, maybe think about 80 meters or 40 meters and above, and go from there. But your situation, it all depends on what kind of layout you have and how you can do it. So there's loops, dipoles. I'd still stay with the G5 RV. There's a lot of old time hams that dog the antenna, and I think it's unjustified. It works. It gets out there, and my attitude is that any wire in the air is better than no wire in the air.
There's so many factors to this answer too, because there's so many different antennas. They play differently depending on where you are. Are you down in a valley? Are you up on a hill? Do you have space? Are you in an HOA? So all of those factors will play into what antenna are possible for you. But I think Steve has given us some good options and some things to get you started, and maybe poke around an antenna book too and kind of evaluate what your space might be like. I think space restrictions and HOAs almost lead every discussion with antennas, because ideally we all have 20 acres and 4 towers or whatever it is. But that's not necessarily the case. And what works for me might not work where Steve is or work where you are if you're in a valley. So there's a lot of factors.
Oh, there's huge factors. I mean, we can go into it so deep, but every situation's different on what will work for me, might not work for you. And what works for you might not work for me. So, I mean, it's just, you're going to have to, and this is where the local Elmers come into play. We'll tie that back in.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that have been doing the hobby, and they're local to you. They know what has been successful for them locally, because every place is different, soil conductivity, just the whole environment is, varies from one place to another. And that's where the local knowledge really, really helps out. So, kind of tap into that.
All right. We have time, I think, for one more question. Let's see if we can help Chris. For an HF receive only antenna, would an end-fed dipole cut to the length of a certain band work better for tuning around and listening? Or would a long wire, say 250 feet, work better for all bands?
For HF receive, I would go with the biggest antenna, wire antenna you can put out there. You're just strictly using it for for receive, and it depends on where you want to. If you want to listen on 160, then you got all that capture area, and it all comes down to capture area. So if you have a short piece of wire out there, it's not going to be as efficient as a nice long piece of wire. It's look at the beverage antennas. Those the reasons they work so well is for a couple of reasons. They're low to the ground, and they're long. They're just hundreds and hundreds of feet long. So my personal preference, if I'm just going to have a receive antenna only, I'll throw out as much wire as I can. Just that way you can cover the lowest frequencies, and it will give you that capture area. The antenna is going to capture the RF out there. So.
And you don't have to be so high off the ground. You want to keep it safe enough that you can get under it and people don't trip up on it, or the animal.
If you have a fence line, you can run it along that. And it just don't, or you can run it around the eaves of your house or whatever. Just throw up as much wire as you can for receive. It doesn't have to be tuned for the band, because it's going to work. You only get into the tuning issues if you're going to transmit into it, and that's where we run into issues.
That's a whole different thing.
That's a whole different animal, but we're just receiving. So put up as much as you can. And if you have a wire antenna, then just have a ground rod or something ground as a reference to it. And then as long as you can with the wire antenna, random length is all you need. And
so one final thing before we wrap up this conversation is, the longer the wire, should it be not as loud, not as much static? Does the length of wire help with sound sonically?
It's the height. From what I understand, that's the key with the beverage antenna, is that it's low noise, because the lower you get into the band, the more noise you start picking up, man-made noise. And I haven't done a beverage yet. I keep wanting to. Is the principle of it is that if it's down low, you don't have a lot of the noise component, but you also have the length of the antenna that gives you that capture effect, or picks up the signal and overcomes the noise. So I need to do a little more research on that. I need to actually build one and
do
put one out. And But there's a lot of folks that, especially that are the contesters and the serious DX operators, but mainly the contesters, throw out the beverages in this time of year, especially guys that have, farm fields, and they can go out and, Jerry and Val are, they come to mind right now. And once the crop is in, poop, out comes out the T-bar, and they start pounding in the T-bar, and out goes the beverage antennas until spring.
Well, I hope that works for you. Let us know what you come up with, and keep us posted on that. All right, Steve, I think it's time for us to wrap up. I can't believe how fast the Saturday mornings can go for us as we're trying to help talk about ham radio. We're thanking our Elmers today. It is now an official holiday. We have dubbed it so. We've said it, that's what it is. So that's what it is. So call your Elmers. Thank your Elmers today. If you can, send them a message. Let them know that 100 Watts and a Wire said it's an official sort of holiday now, internationally well known. And you should take the time, if you can, and remember where we all come from. And it's important once you get to a level of experience that you reach back and help somebody up. It doesn't always have to be a teenager or your own children, although that exposure, I think, helps them very much to see what dad's into. It certainly did for me. I go back to the beginning of this show and see, but my father was interested in it. I'm interested in it because I'm interested in my father. That helps. But locally, lend a tool, keep an eye on what's going on locally. It's a time-honored tradition to share your tools with people who don't have it. It's, it's not always cheap to buy all these tools for yourself. Ask someone, ask for help. Don't be afraid of that. Any final thoughts on being an Elmer or looking for one, Steve?
It's, as being an Elmer or looked as an Elmer, it's pretty rewarding to help pass on the knowledge. Even though we don't think about it every day, it's like, oh, hey, Steve, here's XYZ. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay, da, 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 da. And, it feels good. And that we're passing it on, and it's paying it forward is the way I look at it. And we all have knowledge of something. We're all an Elmer in one way or the other. So just be willing to lend a hand and be patient. That being an Elmer it's like being a parent. It's you learn patience, and and it's a good way, and it keeps you sharp. And if you don't know something, just say, I don't know, and let's find out together, and then go from there.
Yeah, it's so important also to think about that. Our Elmers are moving on. They're passing on. Their situations are changing in a lot of ways. Some of us are healthy and young enough, but a lot of the Elmers of yesterday, there's a lot of silent keys out there right now. So, we need to keep that in mind, and we need to pick up our game too. We have to start pulling back when you get to a position. Start to give it back. Start to, help some people. And if you're in the beginning, ask questions. You would be surprised. I thought originally I'm bothering people. Well, if you're bothering people, people are grown-ups, and they'll say, listen, I don't have, I can't help you today. Let's talk about it, or set up a schedule, and, do it with tact if you have to. But ask these questions. You probably will find that most people are excited to help you and give this knowledge away. I thought I was a trouble, and turns out I wasn't. I might have been a pain at some days, but looking back on it, I don't think anybody's going to look at you and go, oh, for real, man? Again? You may think that, but that's probably not really true. So just ask, be patient in waiting for your response if you can. And be patient if you're the one that's going to be giving the information. If nothing else, you can always say, hey, there's a really good book. It's called this, and I know a guy, or whatever. Patience and tact, I think, will go a long way. But also celebrate your Elmers and give them thanks. So thank you again, Steve. You've pulled me welcome. Up when I had no clue. And even if I didn't get the clue, at some point it made sense to me. So thanks for helping me, and thanks for helping me with the show today. I appreciate you every day, but today's the day we're going to talk about it. Anything else we missed, Steve?
One other thing, last
Yes.
week we talked about computers, and it was
Yeah,
kind of PC centric. It was kind of Windows centric, and we touched a little bit about on the Apple side.
Okay.
But let's not forget Linux. I was reminded that there's a plethora of amateur related Linux programs. So, and as we are pretty frugal as a hobby, and there's, Linux is an open source and freeware. So so don't forget that operating system. And if you haven't tried it, give it a try. There's some pretty cool stuff out there. I play with Ubuntu, and in the KDE environment, it's kind of there's GNOME, and there's all kinds of other ones. Mint, I played with that. And so, there's just a plethora, but there's a lot of amateur related software that's out there. So, as we were talking about computers in the shack, we kind of, focused on the Windows side or the Microsoft, and
we don't want to show bias.
Yeah,
all computers are welcome here. All people, everybody, and every technology.
And HamPi came up, and that's another one that runs. There's a lot of amateur related software that runs on a Pi computer. It's really small, and it's not a powerhouse, but hey, it does the job, and things like that. So
cool.
It don't forget the Linux, and
don't forget the Linux.
I'm sorry, but we'll make amends to it.
Yeah, we did. We just did. We did. We'll
did.
Work it out for you. And thanks to everybody who has supported the show. Appreciate you going to YouTube too. This is a great time to see the show. The audio still exists on the podcast side. There's an interesting algorithm for YouTube, so it likes to see when you like something. The thumbs up isn't for ego; it actually sort of
helps us.
It generates the algorithm to go, oh, people are digging that, they're watching it, they seem to like it. Maybe I'll show other people. So those things like that, thumbs up, that kind of deal. You're subscribing.
And, YouTube, it was brought up. There was a question that kind of went through pretty quick, but, the newer the generation here, their Elmers was YouTube, and there's a lot of information out on YouTube, and which is great, but sometimes it could be a little overwhelming, and that's where having the Elmer that you can rely on, or someone local who's been in the hobby a while, they can kind of help you digest that, or kind of point you, hey, not so much, but yes, that's true, but right. And from there. So, and
that reminds me, we got two interesting segments we're working on. One's going to be Steve's going to be on his bench there, so there'll be some times where we'll change over and have Steve show you some things, whether it's messing around with the cable, how to put on a PL259, whatever it is. Plus, next week we're going to start this news segment. So hopefully, in the coming days, we'll be talking about ham radio topics. We'll be showing you a little bit of work on the bench too. We'll figure it all out, but some exciting stuff coming. So subscribe, click the bell. You'll know when we go live and do what we do. But as the two old guys like to say, the show's over when the coffee's empty and the bladder's
full.
That's see, it's true. We both said it. 73, everybody. We appreciate you being here.
Everyone.
Take care of yourselves. Next week, maybe we'll talk about some of the holiday things that we're thinking about or looking at, seeing maybe some prices or whatever you're interested in. I'm curious to see what you guys are looking for and considering buying or saving up for. That'll be interesting. So we'll see you next Saturday. Take care of yourselves and each other. And if you can, by all means, please try and stay above the noise. 73, Steve. 73.
73, Christian, and 73, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Bye.
To join the 100 Watts in a Wire community, visit 100wattsinawire.com.